When it comes to pre-washing a car, there are two main options that people tend to go for, and those are snow foams and citrus pre-washes. So in today's video, I thought it'd be good to kind of compare these two types of chemical. So the three products that I've chosen are Bilt Hamber Auto Foam, Shiny Garage Citrus Oil, and Stjarnagloss Sno as a pH neutral option. So I've got this car behind me to demonstrate it on. I thought that this would be a good vehicle for the demonstration, as it's got that decent level of dirt where you're not really sure whether a citrus or a snow foam would be the best option. So for my first test here, I'm going to be comparing citrus oil and auto foam. So with citrus oil, I mix that up in my IK sprayer at a 1:19 dilutions. So that's 50ml of product to 950ml of water. You can actually go a bit higher than this, up to 1:9 here, but I didn't think that was going to be necessary. With Bilt Hamber Auto Foam, it works a little bit differently, as they don't give you a straight up dilution ratio on the back of the bottle. It instead gives you a panel impact ratio, which means the amount of product and water that you add to the foam cannon will vary depending on what pressure washer and foam cannon you're actually using. The max PIR it kind of recommends is 4%, so with my particular setup that is 220ml of snow foam and 280ml of water. So I applied both these chemicals to a dry vehicle and gave them 5 to 6 minutes to dwell before thoroughly rinsing off with the pressure washer. So you probably notice in here that the pressure washer is removing a lot of dirt. So I have a Kranzol K10 which has a really high flow rate, so a lot more cleaning capability compared to something like a Karcher K2 for example. However, if I pull you in a bit closer, you can definitely see a difference between the sides that were treated with the chemicals and the bit in the middle that was just rinsed. In terms of the differences between those two chemicals, I really couldn't see any difference. Both of them looked like they got the vehicle to the point where it's pretty much completely clean. I did do a little swipe test on those clean areas and again couldn't notice any difference between the two. I then repeated this test on the rear of the car and got the same results. I couldn't notice any difference in terms of cleaning power between the two on this level of dirt. I know there's probably going to be a few people watching at this point, seeing that the pressure washer is removing a lot of dirt here and wondering why even bother with these chemicals. And the reason is that even though the pressure washer does remove quite a lot of dirt, it doesn't remove enough in my opinion, and the chemicals definitely make the overall pre-wash process more effective. Getting as much grime as possible off the car is really important to reduce the risk of scratches and swirl marks during the contact wash stage. So if you aren't really bothered about this, then it's fine, go ahead and skip this stage, but if you want a swirl-free vehicle, then choosing an effective pre-wash is really going to help with that. So I also wanted to do a little comparison between two different types of snow foam. Now they can generally be separated into pH neutral snow foams and alkaline snow foams. So I compared Bilt Hamber Auto Foam with Stjarnagloss Sno, which is a pH neutral foam. I went for a 1:9 dilution ratio here, which is the kind of max you would go with this product. And again, repeated that test exactly the same, giving the products 5 to 6 minutes to dwell before rinsing thoroughly. As you can see from the results, Stjarnagloss Sno did very little in terms of cleaning capability and was only marginally better than the rinse only side, but still pretty similar. Auto Foam again did a great job at stripping that traffic film. This is to be expected really, as pH neutral foams are not generally known for their cleaning ability, and for this level of grime, if you wanted to stick with that Stjarnagloss brand, you'd be looking at their forced citrus pre-cleaner instead. I anticipated that I would get some questions about the pH of all these chemicals in the comments, so I did jump on eBay and get some litmus paper so I could test that out. I measured the pH when the products were neat and also when they were diluted, so the concentration where they'd be hitting the panel. So for the citrus pre-wash, this is the same as what I mixed up in the IK sprayer, but for the snow foams, I adjusted it to take into account that the foam cannon dilutes it further, and I could get that concentration that was actually coming out of the nozzle and hitting the panel. Litmus paper isn't super precise, and although I did repeat this test a few times, I do think you should take these measurements with a pinch of salt and just use them to get a kind of guideline. So Auto Foam was coming in at 13 when neat, and then it took it down to about pH 9 when diluted, so not a super strong alkali. Stjarnagloss Sno was coming out right around pH 7, which is to be expected as it is pH neutral foam, and Shiny Garage Citrus Oil was right at the top of that alkaline scale at pH 14 when neat, and then when diluted took it down to around 12, so still a pretty strong alkali. Now the reason why a lot of people shy away from alkaline products is because they're worried that they're going to either degrade the wax sealant that's on the car or actually damage the surfaces. Now just because a product has a higher pH doesn't automatically mean that it's a riskier product to use. And there's a lot more that's going on in terms of both cleaning ability and safety on the surfaces than just pH. So here I did just want to talk a little bit about the differences between citruses and traffic film removers. Now it's generally agreed that traffic film removers are a more aggressive chemical that are more likely to cause damage, and citruses, although generally stronger than most snow foams, are less likely to cause any issues. However, from doing a little bit of research, I've noticed that the lines between citrus pre-washes and traffic foam removers are actually pretty blurred, and some of them share the same chemistry. For a pre-wash really to be considered a citrus, it has D-limonene in the formulation, which is a chemical that's used quite widely in the cleaning industry, but isn't found to be harmful or corrosive to metals and plastics. However, this is a pretty expensive raw material to source, hence why a lot of citruses on the market do also have other chemicals in there that are going to help with the cleaning ability as well. And some of these chemicals are similar to what you'll find in an all-purpose cleaner or a traffic foam remover. One of these chemicals is sodium hydroxide, which is quite an aggressive chemical and it is known to be caustic, which means that the likelihood of running into issues is higher. This can include staining of chrome and plastic trim. The Shiny Garage citrus oil that I'm using today is actually classified as a citrus and traffic film remover, and it says it in the name. However, a lot of citruses that I've also looked at do actually have this chemical as well. One thing that I will note though is that Auto Foam that I've been using today does not have sodium hydroxide in it, and it is considered to be a non-caustic chemical. If you are worried about the chemicals that are being used in your citrus pre-wash, then it is worth having a quick Google and seeing if you can find the safety data sheet. Now, a lot of the chemicals probably aren't going to make sense, but one to look out for is that sodium hydroxide, and you don't want it really to be having a very high concentration of it. A lot of the citruses that I've seen will typically have less than 1%, so it isn't too concentrated. But if you are worried and really just want to stay on the safe side, then consider looking at a chemical that is specifically described as non-caustic. A good example of a non-caustic citrus is the Garage Therapy one. This has a high concentration of D-limonene to help give it that extra cleaning power, but doesn't contain any caustic chemicals, so you don't have to really worry as much about causing potential staining problems. A couple of tips to keep in mind regardless of what pre-wash chemical you're actually using are to firstly make sure you only ever apply them to cool panels, as this of course reduces the risk of them drying out, which is when the likelihood of staining is dramatically increased. And secondly, keep an eye on that dwell time. Sometimes the citruses can dry out pretty quickly in just a few minutes, especially in warmer weather or if it's quite breezy. So if you want to extend that dwell time, then consider popping a snow foam over the top of it, which will help keep those panels wet and stop the products from drying out so quickly. Now, I wanted to address more generally my approach to pre-washing and the chemicals that I'm using. Most of the cars that you've seen featured on this channel are pretty dirty, and hence why I tend to go in with a citrus and then layer a snow foam over the top. The reason being is that the citrus will be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and the snow foam, being pH neutral or alkaline, will generally just serve to extend that dwell time. I tend to focus the citrus pre-wash on those lower sections which have the heaviest layer of grime, as opposed to layering them over the entire vehicle and taking that more aggressive approach which isn't really needed. For general maintenance though, on my own vehicle, which I wash every 1 to 2 weeks, I generally reach for an alkaline snow foam. I find that when this is diluted appropriately, it doesn't cause any damage from my experience, both to the protection and to the exterior surfaces. I do sometimes use pH neutral snow foams, but as I'm living in the UK, it generally tends to rain a lot, so my car does get pretty dirty between washes. Citrus free washes I do still find to be quite a useful product, particularly on dirty areas if the car has got particularly grimy since the last wash. And I also do find them quite good for different situations as well, such as cleaning tyres and dealing with stubborn bug guts on the front of the vehicle, whereas snow foam tends not to work as well. I think there's definitely a place for both snow foams and citrus free washes, and it's really a good idea to kind of play about with them on your own vehicle and see what concentrations work best for you in terms of getting the most dirt removal, but without being too aggressive. If you have enjoyed this video, it'd be brilliant if you could drop it a like, and thanks very much for watching.